Hello Internet, and welcome back to Tech-Xample. We have an interesting bit of marketing and manufacturing history here, the forgotten flagship of the 4th GCN generation, the RX 590. Arriving much later than its brethren, and the only discrete GPU AMD made on its manufacturing node, what about this GPU made the public forget all about it, while its sibling cards, the 480 and RX 580, get all the glory? And how does it perform in 2026? To explain the history of the RX 590, you need to understand GCN4 and the cards that comprised it. GCN4 debuted on the Polaris 10/RX 400 series of GPUs in June of 2016, with the top of the line for this series, RX 480 squarely a mid-tier card with just 36 CUs. Polaris represented a big shift in AMD's GPU strategy as they set out to the mainstream market first, deferring the launch of high-end GPUs, leaving a huge amount of hope stapled to Vega. This speaks volumes of the extent of GCN's success, or lack thereof, in the high-end space. When Vega launched in 2017, bringing GCN5 with it, most were left heavily disappointed by another classic AMD misstep. Too much voltage, horrible stock coolers, and technologies that were far too forward-looking for the market, all while playing catch-up to Nvidia in gaming and professional workloads. With AMD's hope for the high-end scuttled, the public turned their attention back to Polaris. The refreshed Polaris 20 series of cards were out, competing very well to their respective Nvidia counterparts, both in performance and value, while also potentially having more VRAM to boot, leading to renewed sales and interest, which AMD really needed after so many generations of faltering behind. Of course, one cannot forget about the elephant in the room, crypto mining. Crypto was going through quite the boom at this point, and it was found out that AMD cards outperformed their price class, both new and old, and so miners started snapping them up en masse. Cards of all varieties were out of stock, with the Vega family consistently off shelves because of their massive miner demand. This is the situation we find ourselves in. The RX 580 has been out and out of stock, the higher end Vega cards are slightly disappointing, and monster mining cards, so they're gone too, which leaves AMD with a limited selection of GPUs to compete with Nvidia and their newly refreshed 1060 GDDR5X variation, which launched in fall of 2018. So what does AMD do? Refresh the RX 480 again! It's foolproof! Yeah, they refreshed the refresh GPU, but this time actually changed something, besides the clocks and power settings. They actually switched to a 12nm node for this card, down from the 14nm on the older 480 and 580. But this card has the same amount of cores as the 480 and 580, so why isn't it using less power? AMD pulled another factory overclock situation, like with the 580 and the 390X, and overclocked and overvolted the snot out of this thing, meaning it saw no benefits in terms of power consumption compared to its older brethren. AMD also noted that the 12nm node they picked was aimed for transistor performance, not die size or efficiency. Running on the Polaris 30 XT chip, the RX 590 boasts 2,304 cores, running at a 1469 MHz base, 1545 MHz boost. This rides on 8GB of GDDR5 on a 256-bit bus, clocked at 2 GHz, giving a nice 256GB of bandwidth. The largest difference might be in power, as the 590 has a stock 8+6 pin combo, meaning it can suck down more than 200 watts under a load. Manufactured on that newer 12nm FinFET process by GlobalFoundries, who actually used to be part of AMD and was spun off years before 590 existed. I don't know when else I'd be able to mention it, but I think it's interesting trivia. AMD really pushed this card in an unleashing video in the future, so stay tuned for that, but I'd also like to see how efficient the 12nm node is by clock matching this card to a 480 and possibly undervolting the snot out of it instead of chasing performance at all costs, so keep an eye out for that. It's important to compare the specs of the 590 to its predecessor/sister cards, the 580 and 480. The 480, in particular, showcases how much AMD was really able to squeeze out of GCN4, the 480 only boosting to clock speeds of 1266 MHz, giving the 590 a 22% clock improvement, not to mention the standard 8GB of VRAM, versus the 480's option of 4 or 8. Some of you might point and say the 590 isn't a true flagship, since it never matches their high-end products in performance or price, which, yeah, sure, I get that. But the 590 is a flagship, just a mid-range one. The naming scheme designates it as such, and for GCN4, this is the ultimate gaming card. No arguing that. If you want the cream of the crop from GCN4, for whatever reason, this is the card to pick. With all that out of the way, let's see exactly what this card can do. Starting off the round of synthetic benchmarks, we have the Passmark barrage of tests, which touch on 2D capabilities, the major DirectX revisions in 3D, and general compute tasks, such as physics, fractals, and sci-fi simulations. Starting off with the 2D results, the 590 starts off strong with a score of 1036, placing it in the middle of the pack. In 3D, we see a score of 10,435, which has the 590 trading blows with Fury cards, outpacing the stock results of all three former flagships, but falling a bit behind the overclocked results, which you can watch in the Unleashing series playlist if you want to learn more about them. In compute, the RX card slips below the Fury flagships, with a reduced core count accounting for the large performance difference here. And for Mark II, we aim to stress a card's cooling and power delivery systems, aiming to get a good feel for high stress results, where stability under constant demand is warranted. Here, in 1080p, the mid-range flagship card again falls behind the Fury cards, with the lowered core count providing some explanation. Preferred Mark exposes the main issue with the RX 590, efficiency. This card is pushed far beyond its optimal voltage curve, all in the name of better performance, which we see come up at 1440p and 4K. It's easier to run a bigger core at a lower speed and lower voltage to get the same performance at a lower power consumption, like with the plain Fury card, which has a similar power draw on a much older node, running nearly half a gigahertz slower on an older architecture to boot. All that, and it soundly beats the 590. Just to show how far AMD pushed this core to compete. Next up, the 3D Mark Duo, with Fireshark Extreme first up, testing DirectX 11 capabilities to the extreme. The 590 isn't doing too hot here, only getting close to the Fury Nano, a card that only uses a single 8-pin power connector and a small form factor. Granted, these two cards were in completely different price classes, but not so much nowadays on the used market. The time spy results are a bit more favorable to the RX card, placing it just ahead of the Fury and Nano, but slightly behind the Fury X and the overclocked cards. To end things off here, we have Superposition 1080p Extreme and 4K Optimized. Both are designed to really push a card to its limits, and, as such, has a reputation as an excellent overclocking stability tool. On the 1080p side of things, the 590 trades blows, but falls short of the Fury Nano, again falling behind the other Fury cards. At 4K, the same pattern repeats itself, with the Fury Nano being the main competitor to this card, with most everything else leaving this card behind. We start off our gaming adventures with the Dolphin Emulation Custom Benchmark, where we have a Wii game running at 4K with 16x filtering and 8x SSAA to have the heaviest load on the GPU as possible. The RX 590 starts off with averages of 20.5 and loads of 11.5 and 11.4. This places the 590 pretty far behind the rest of the pack, only outpacing the Medical MXRT card, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the corner. In Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, a modern AAA DX12 Ultimate title, at 1080p high, the faux flagship steps back into the fray with averages of 30.7, placing it far ahead of the older Fury cards here, even when they have custom drivers and overclocks. At 1440p high, we see something similar, with the 590 clearly outpacing the Fury cards, but still lagging behind the bigger and newer cards, leaving it as a new class of in-between performance. 4K once again has the GCN4 card outpacing everything GCN3 has to offer, but I wouldn't recommend it really, since it only performs around 12.5 FPS on average, far from a playable experience. Up next is Slime Rancher 2, an open sandbox and exploration DX12 title. At 1080p high, the 590 just barely misses out on 60 FPS on average, with lows sticking close to the highs here. This places the RX card right around the older Fury and Fury X cards, but with significantly improved load performance. At 1440p, the 590 tumbles to last place, underperforming by large margins compared to nearly every other card tested, with the 4K numbers placing it more in line with the other cards, with averages of 16.9 and lows very close behind. This is clearly a 1080p card here, with lowered settings a must at higher resolutions. Finally, we end things off with Overwatch 2, a modern team-based FPS. The 1080p Ultra numbers are certainly impressive here, with the twice reheated Polaris card matching up quite favorably to the Fury Flagship of GCN3, trading blows and averages in 1% lows, with only the 0.1% lows falling behind. The 1440p numbers again have the Polaris card facing off with the Fury X and averages, but the lows completely crumble to the bottom. The 4K results are more mixed, however, with the 590 now no longer battling the Fury X, but instead placing somewhere between the Fury Nano and its stock and overclock configurations. Not a terrible showing for this card, even if its power consumption wasn't far off from the Fury flagships it faces off against. GCN4 brought a few improvements to the video engines running decoding and encoding, and now's the time to see how they perform. The Puget Bench suite for DaVinci Resolve uses fusion effects, rendering, encoding, and more to showcase real-world video editing performance. Starting with H.264 encoding, the 590 scores 13.93 FPS, matching the other GCN4 card, the MXRT 6700, but way behind a modern card like the RTX 3060. The H.265 encoding has the 590 at around half the performance of a 3060. The GPU effects test has the RX 590 score 28.5, while the 3060's 42.3, which is to be expected, obviously. I'm still building a database of cards to test here, so results aren't super easy to compare for now, but will get easier in time. The AI score is similar, with the 590 at 14.4. In the real-world YouTube gamer test, the RX 590 achieves 11.99 FPS, not a particularly quick result. For comparison, the 3060 scored basically double that. So, finally, with Shutter Encoder, we test the speed and quality of the native encoder, taking a 15-minute video and changing it to H.265. The AMD card finishes the max quality test at 2 minutes and 39 seconds, not far behind the other cards here. However, the quality dips a bit behind the Nvidia card, scoring an A overall, with only a few blemishes when things really get moving, and with the file size ballooning against the original software encoding result. All in all, not a terrible result here. This card would make do as an editing card in a pinch, but I'd absolutely point to something with AMD's much better video hardware, like a 6750 XT, or something from Nvidia like the 3060. The newer hardware is more capable of file compression without sacrificing too much quality, something AMD's older cards really struggle with. What a weird product, the 590. AMD was really struggling to compete with Nvidia in the high end, so they chose to fight in the value arena, and succeeded with the 480 and especially the 580, but what value was there to be had here? The RX 590 came much later, launching after the next-gen Turing cards were arriving, at a higher price tag than an RX 580 would be had new or used. Now, not to be too harsh to the semi-flagship value card, it does game quite well. The 8GB of VRAM combined with better support for a newer rendering tech allows this $250 at the time to compete well against the older Fury cards, as we've seen in Ratchet & Clank along with Slime Rancher 2. But unfortunately, only by pulling similar amounts of power, which is a real shame. This is a value mid-range card being stretched and pushed to ridiculous degrees to fill the space in AMD's lineup, slotting between the RX 580 and Vega 56, while they waited on RDNA to set a new generation in motion. So, should you buy one? Well, I don't know. I'm definitely arguing it's more than fine for everything you want to throw at it at 1080p medium high, but it simply pulls too much power for such a small spec bump over the 580 and costs too much over the same. A used 580 8GB is near $70 used on eBay right now, while the 590 is rare, so it fetches a premium. The cheapest working models are around $100, and I got mine for $85. And even at $85, it's a hard sell, because this is pretty much a refreshed value card. Better values can be had for that $100, that's for sure, and at $85, just get a good 580, overclock it, and buy yourself a good book with a leftover. This has been Tech-Xample, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.